Welcome to Attic Raiders Retro Reviews, where today we've journeyed to this medieval edifice to brave ghosts and ghouls while we look at Creep's Castle. A castle looms in the distance. It's Creep's Castle, where a chest filled with gold is waiting for someone to find it. It's hidden at the top of the castle, and to get there you must first travel through dark, drafty corridors and pass many dangers. In the nearby village, they say the castle is haunted. Creep's Castle was released by Spears Games, but quite when is a little bit of a mystery. Unlike other games of this vintage, there's no copyright date printed anywhere on the box, or on the instructions, or stamped into any of the plastic pieces. So there's nothing to tell us when exactly it came out. A little bit of research online brings us to Board Game Geeks, where Creep's Castle is listed as coming out in 1980. The problem is, there's no evidence for a 1980 release at all. As I said, there's no actual date printed anywhere on the game, so I don't know where this 1980 release date came from. If you look on the versions history on BoardGameGeeks.com, there's also a 1991 version listed from Germany and a 1993 version listed for this particular game. But again, there's no evidence for that, and like Wikipedia, anybody can put in those dates, and there's no real fact checking going on at any point. Most eBay sold listings have this game listed as coming out in 1980, but again, that information comes from BoardGameGeek.com, because that's the first listing that comes up on Google if you type in Creep's Castle game. As far as hard evidence of a release date goes, I've managed to find an online copy of the instructions for when this game was released as Poltergeist by Jumbo Games. Now, these multi-language instructions have the game listed as being copyright 1990. I also know that this game was re-released by Pressman under the name Addams Family Creepy Mansion in 1992. In that version, they took the game exactly as it is, but they changed the artwork on the stickers to show some of the characters and the details from the mansion in that show. Now, the Addams Family cartoon came out in 1992, so that ties in exactly with when that version of the game would have been released. Given that the Addams Family version was a spin-off of the Creep's Castle original, that puts Creep's Castle being a date earlier than 1992. I'm going to go for an educated guess of a 1990 release date, when Jumbo Games released Poltergeist. It might possibly be 91 in order to change licenses to a different publisher, but it's around 1990-91, definitely not 1980 as far as I can tell. Whatever the situation though, is definitely a vintage game. Now this one is for 2 to 4 players, it's age 6 and over, and it's quite a short game. It's only going to take you about 10 minutes to play. It's for kids. Adults going to get a little bit bored of it, but for kids this is a great game. When I was a child, I had this game, and this was my favourite board game when I was a kid. My nephew now comes over to our house, and I've got lots of board games, and this is his favourite one to play. Whenever he's over, he always wants to play that castle game. An exciting action game filled with suspense. Try to avoid the traps as the fiendish ball rolls down through the castle. It's very simple, kind of like Snakes and Ladders, but with an added chance randomizing element, with a ball rolling through it, knocking you off of that castle. And that's where the fun comes in, because you don't know if you're going to be knocked back to the start or not. Let's have a closer look. Welcome to Creep's Castle. You are invited to a real Creep's Castle, and you must race to win the huge chest of gold which is right at the top. Be the first to reach it with your playing piece to win, but Creep's Castle is full of mysterious noises, doors which blow open, and trapdoors that take you by surprise. A huge ball rolls through the castle, choosing first one passage and then another. A door or trapdoor can suddenly swing open, making you tumble off Creep's castle, so that you have to start all over again. Watch out, there are few safe places in Creep's castle, and you may be knocked off a place where others have stepped safely. Creep's castle is inhabited by ogres and ghosts. You are searching for gold, but the ghosts are having a party. Whoa! The playing pieces are just these very simple tokens. They've just got the same sticker on both sides and a simple kind of coffin shape to them, which is a nice touch. Personally, I would have preferred if these guys were actually three-dimensional characters. That would have been far more interesting, but in that case they would have been far more fragile, I would imagine, and since the whole point of these is that they're going to get knocked off of a 4 or 5 story castle, they're going to have to take quite a bit of battering with hitting the plastic edges on their way down. So for a durability point of view, these are probably a much better design than a 3D molded playing piece, but a 3D molded playing piece would have looked much nicer. On the ground floor, we've got this rather boozed up looking butler welcoming us into the castle, looking rather shabby there. Then we've got on this flap here that can knock us off, we've got some classic knights suits of armor, and then we've got some molded plastic lantern and a little archway there, steps, and we've got this arrow saying that you can go up those steps there. On the next floor, we've got a dragon breathing bolts of lightning from the looks of things from his nose. Nice candelabra here, an Egyptian mummy. We've got a rather traditional man in a white sheet ghost, and we've got Frankenstein's monster over here in a rather threatening pose, but doesn't look that scary. And we've got a trapdoor over here which might eject you out of the castle. Slightly further up, we've got this giant spider here with what kind of looks like a hot cross bun marking on its back. We've got just a door that doesn't open or do anything there. We've got Quasimodo, maybe Hunchback of Notre Dame here. In fact, you can see here's his bells up here that he's been busy ringing. We've got some kind of skeleton, ghost, Pied Piper type guy. Not quite sure what he is exactly. It's kind of some random creep. And I think this is Dracula himself here welcoming us to his castle. And we've got the steps going up to the final level. On the final level here we have a trapdoor with something spooky peering out between these two planks. And of course this trapdoor can open and flip you off, eject you out of the castle. The arrow here says if you land on this you have to move back onto the trapdoor. Got a couple of footsteps, rats over here, and here is the gold that you're trying to land on and win. Creep's Castle is a really simple roll and move game where players are trying to get their playing piece from the beginning here through the castle up higher and higher until eventually they reach the attic where there is a chest of gold waiting for them. Of course, while they're doing that, they're trying to avoid all of the creeps and the monsters and all the traps which are waiting for them. In order to get the game ready, we need to take the ball bearing and put that into the chute here, and that is ready to activate. Players roll the dice and move that many spaces. So that's 1, 2, 3 spaces here. If players get a 6, they get to roll again. If somebody happens to land on this space here, which has an arrow on it at the base of this ladder, then instead of stopping here, the person gets to go up the ladder and stop at this space here. Of course, the big selling point on this game is the traps, and that's what really makes this game interesting. In order to activate the traps, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 white tiles. And if somebody happens to land on one of these white tiles, then they have to press down their playing piece, which will activate the ball bearing rolling through the maze in the back of the castle. As the ball bearing rolls through, there's a couple of different paths it can take, and it will randomly choose these. So the traps will randomly activate, so you never quite know which traps are going to activate and knock people off and send them back to the start. Of course, as you're moving around, there are some safe areas as well where you're never ever going to get hit. Obviously, these areas down here are safe. I would say this area is safe, but it's not, because actually you'd get sent up here, which is not safe. The stairs are always going to be safe areas. This one here is a safe area because nothing's going to happen to you here. This one here in front of this door is a safe area. This window here is a safe area. And 1, 2, 3, 4 are safe areas. This one here is not a safe area because there's a big arrow here. And if you land on the arrow, you have to go back one space to here. And this could potentially be a problem. When the traps are activated, there are basically flippers on here which will come out and flip the characters off of the castle, and if they get flipped off, they have to start again. As well as these ones though, there's a couple of extra traps. There is a trapdoor here which will flip up to knock people off, trapdoor here which will flip up to knock people off, and if we have a player standing here in front of this archway, they could also potentially get knocked off by a ball bearing. So since he's landed on a white space, let's activate it and take a look. Oh no, he's gone, and she's gone. These guys will all have to go back to the start and begin again. Now, as a kid, this is potentially mystifying and you've got no idea what's going to happen. As an adult, it's a little bit more understandable and there's less mystery. As the ball bearing rolls down here, it's always going to activate this trap. This trap here, this trap door, always flips every time it rolls down. When it gets to this section here, this middle one always flips up, and then it's either this middle one and this one here, or it's this middle one and this set here. Once it gets down to this section here, again, it's always the middle one that flips up, and then it's either the middle one and this section, or the middle one and this one. And then when it gets down to this level here, it's always this middle one that flips up, and then it's either going to come out here and knock somebody off here, or it's going to come out here and flip up this trap here. So because these middle ones here always get flipped when the ball bearing runs through the maze, it's potentially, there's no point in really pressing this one if you land on it, which happens a lot, because as soon as you press that one, you are going to get flipped every single time. Same with this one here. This game, because of the number of different ways that you can get knocked off of here, it happens that it takes quite a long time to play this game because you're having to start again a lot. I'd say it's almost impossible to get all the way through this without getting knocked off a number of times. The game board itself is really sturdily made. I was hoping to be able to take the screws out of the back here and open this up to show you the paths that the ball bearing can go through and how it can randomly choose those traps to activate. But even when I undo the 7 screws holding this together, it's also glued together at the seams here. So this is not coming apart. This is really nicely made, and it is a chunky, good quality piece. So it's really simple to play. It's basically set up for you as soon as you take it out of the box. And for that, the box has to be pretty big. It takes up quite a lot of storage space. So that's a point that's not in the game's favour. The randomisation and the ball rolling through, being able to hear the ball rolling through, knowing that it's going to knock somebody off but not who, builds anticipation. And that randomisation really does give it a tick in the plus column. Unfortunately, some of the rules make it a little bit annoying. When you get to the top of that castle, when you have to land exactly on the treasure in order to win, that can be rather frustrating, because if you don't roll and land exactly on that treasure, you're going to end up going backwards, and you're going to have to do that again and again and again sometimes. And very often you're going to land onto that arrow, end up on the trapdoor, and go all the way back to the beginning and have to start all over again. But I love the theming. Anything with monsters, haunted castles, all that kind of thing is great, and it's going to go brilliantly in the collection. It's not an easy game to find. This is not one that you're going to find in many charity shops, but it is around. If you're going to go out and buy this on eBay, it's one of the more popular, rarer games, and so this is going to cost you about £30 for this one, unless you manage to pick it up somewhere else. For nostalgia value, it's a great game. It's worth it if you had it as a child. For adults, not such a great game, but if you're an adult with kids, worth getting if you can find it, because they're going to love it. All in all, it's a recommendation from me. Until next time, this is Attic Raiders Retro Reviews.